Good evening, all. This is Jack from Charting the Markets, and this is the Bigger Picture webinar for the evening of Sunday, the 21st of September. My disclaimer, I do this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take some what I'm doing and learn from it, transfer it to your own charts. I'm not here to issue trading signals. Right. Last week, we had a bullish leaning week till Tuesday, and the previous week leaned bullish, but next week is a different story. We've got a strongly leaning bearish day on Monday, another one on Tuesday, fairly bearish leading day on Thursday, and a modestly bullish leading day on Friday. Overall, the week, particularly obviously the first 4 days, leans strongly bearish. The following week, we've then got another very bearish day on the end of the month, and then we switch into a period of bearish tape. But basically, from here till Tuesday the 30th is the last significant bearish period of the year. So watching with great interest to see what happens there. In the meantime, obviously, we saw a pretty strong move up, interrupted slightly by the Fed announcement. Now, the Fed thing cut two ways, you see. The interest rate cut, obviously, on of 0.25% was what the market expected. What the market wasn't really expecting was that they would forecast another 2 rate cuts over the remainder of the year. Now, that cuts two ways. One, the market likes lower rates, so it was cheered up by that. Two, the reason why they are expecting to see 2 more cuts is that they're expecting problems on labour markets and basically in the economy. So obviously that's less good news. So everyone's still processing that, but in the meantime, we saw some higher highs here. That did some good things in terms of reaching targets above. We reached the IWM target above and made a new all-time high there. In the short term, we've got no negative divergence on ES. We've got a weak 6-minute sell signal that we almost lost on Friday but survived on NQ. On RTY, no current divergence on YM. YM, we've got a rising wedge here, which is nice, and a 60-minute sell signal that's fixed, and a potential little level top here. It's only small, but we've only got a sort of an 8-day, 9-day bearish period here. My expectations, I mean, it might build into something larger, but I'm keeping my expectations relatively modest. But we've got a small level top here, a larger potential level top here, and RTY and YM were the ones who were really making the running last week. On DAX, we got a weak 60-minute sell signal that's fixed here. We've seen a much larger retracement here, and actually we never even got that close to the daily middle band last week. So we'll see how that goes. But I do have a penciled in possible falling wedge here with quite a nice looking support trend line. So wondering whether we might be seeing a break up on that in the not too distant future. And ESTX, we had an IHS which I was doubtful about making target, but we made the target pretty much exactly. And we're forming what looks an awful lot like a rising megaphone here. Pretty decent resistance trend line here, so I'm leaning towards this breaking down. Overall, I'm quite liking the prospects for a bit of a retracement next week, and I think the setup for it looks pretty good. All right, looking at the charts. We've still got a weak RSI 5 sell signal fixed on the monthly. That could fail, but I'm kind of leaning towards that making target. I wrote a post a few weeks ago talking about a possible resistance trend line above. This was the resistance trend line above, and we are reaching it. This is for a trend line that goes back to 2018. If you were to look at, hang on, wait a second, it's this trend line here, and you can see that actually we haven't just touched it. I was checking this trend line earlier. We've actually gone up through it, suggesting that trend line isn't going to hold. I was looking at alternatives. This is one I've drawn in here, which is looking like potentially a long way up. There will be other alternatives, but it may be that we're only really going to see it when we head up. Equally, this could be a bearish overthrow. I am thinking we're going to be making a very significant high in the next few months, and we might spend a year or two in a bear market. So we will see. This is a little sooner than I was expecting a bearish overthrow to be beginning on SPX, though. In terms of the weekly charts, we did have a possible weekly RSI 5 sell signal brewing, and we have moved up and lost that divergence. In terms of the daily chart, I'm going to start recording the numbers here soon. I don't really get interested until this gets over 4%. On the distance from the 45 DMA, which is why I haven't really been noting the numbers particularly lately. But we are getting pretty close to that. In terms of the daily chart, no current negative divergence. We had a bit of negative divergence here, and we lost it on Friday. On ES, we still have a possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing. We lost that on SPX, and we also lost it on the Qs. We had weak sell signals brewing on both. In terms of the hourly charts, I'm thinking we will likely see a week or 10 days of consolidation or retracement. After that, I'll be wondering about this trend line here, which is a pretty decent looking trend line. And really, I'd be leaning towards that holding. But I'm thinking if we just see a consolidation here and start going up again, that would be the obvious next target. I've got that currently at about the 67.10 area and rising, of course. On the 15-minute chart, hang on, wait a second. Sorry, I've reached a point where the structure of Opera has changed in a way where I'm going to have to most likely upgrade my RAM in the next couple of weeks. But bear with me a moment. All right, looking at the 15-minute chart on SPX. Hang on, wait a second. This should. Hang on, wait. Sorry, I'm going to Opera, which is my preferred browser for this sort of thing, has actually upgraded and become much more memory intensive for the number of tabs I tend to keep open. So if I like it, which I do, then I'm likely going to have to upgrade my memory a lot to continue using it this way. Anyway, on the 15-minute chart, on the move up from the September low, the August low, we're slightly overthrowing the decent channel resistance trend line here, and we have a shorter term wedge from the September low, which is pretty close to a potential high, but that is a little higher, maybe another 20 handles. In terms of NDX, all right. Looking at the Qs, we lost the daily negative divergence there. Okay, this is getting downright annoying. Bear with me. Right, on the hourly chart, we've got a possible RSI 5 and a possible RSI 14 sell signal brewing on the Qs, which is encouraging for a pullback. Bigger picture, I've got the main resistance trend line, which I'm thinking may well be a target, and I've got that currently at about the 607 area. But I'm thinking we do a bit of a retracement first. On the 15-minute chart, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed, possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing as well. In terms of Dia, we've still got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, no divergence on the RSI 5. We have gone through one trend line. We're getting pretty close to another. There are more options. But the caveat here is that we've been seeing the AI the tech wave up has been going very independently from Dia and IWM. So it's a bit hard to relate how they're moving to each other. At the moment, we've had recent few days where they were moving together, but not on the same days, really, just in the same week. And that's because the Fed putting down interest rates was far better for Dia and particularly IWM. Than it was for the others. In terms of the 15-minute chart, I've got a wedge from the August low here. It's nice. It's very nice, and we've exactly touched the resistance trend line here. I've high hopes for this next week. We've got a series of small double tops. They're not big, but as I said, I'm not expecting to see anything hugely dramatic. But I'm thinking we've got some nice little patterns here which may well deliver. All right, let's have a look at the bigger picture chart on IWM. And looking at the daily chart, we lost the RSI 5 sell signal we had here. We've still just held on by a thread to the weak RSI 14 sell signal we've got here. But the main thing is we had the IHS here. This is the one I called as it was forming in May, and that finally made target last week. So we've got a new all-time high here. which is something I've been wanting to see. Looking at the hourly charts, no current negative divergence worth a mention. A couple of very, very weak sell signals there. We've gone up through this trend line here. That could be a bearish overthrow, but I'm leaning against that being the case. I'm thinking we may well be going to the next trend line here. But again, I'm thinking that we might see this AI thing carry SPX and Q a lot higher. I'm wondering how much of that we're going to see on DIA and IWM. Particularly now that IWM has reached the retest target. On the 15-minute chart, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, and again, the short-term pattern from the August low is pretty encouraging for seeing some retracement from here. All right, looking at DAX. We actually made it back on Friday to test the daily middle band, but it was more that the daily middle band moved down to reach DAX. We've got a potential little level bottom here. We could see a decent retrace. The Europeans are having troubles with tariffs. So the European trade deal may collapse just because the way that the tariffs was being applied was changed, particularly in the way that the content of the tariffed metals like aluminium and copper, etc., started being tariffed in a different way, and actually that's heavily affected German exports. So they're digesting that, and there will be more coming on that, I'm sure. But in the meantime, that's I think why the reason that this has been underperforming so much. In terms of ESTX has been doing better, but of course that's across Europe. DAX is just Germany. Nikkei, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, nothing really on the RSI 5, but I did draw in this target trend line here, and we have reached it. So I'm thinking that we may well be seeing more of that. All right, let's roll over and look at currencies. Okay, DX. We saw a retest of the low here, and that was a very, very interesting retest because that was a main retest. Doesn't look like on the futures, but on the spot price, this was a retest of the 2025 low, and it's potentially set up a double bottom, which could be the start of a very, very big bullish move. In the short term, we've got a possible 60-minute sell signal brewing here after a sharp move up last week. I'm thinking we might see a bit of downside there too. Not a huge amount of support for that elsewhere. We've got a possible buy signal brewing here on USD, which is inverse buy signal brewing on GBP. Nothing really on USD JPY, but I am leaning towards seeing some pullback on the dollar and a bit of a bounce on Euro and GBP USD. Let's have a look at see how that looks on the bigger picture. Right, looking at the dollar, on the bigger picture chart, and this really is the bigger picture chart, actually I've got an alternate version I've done, which, well, I'll talk about that some other time. But anyway, what we've done here is this rising megaphone here. I've got various marks in from like 22 when we were making this resistance trend line, and we formed this much better trend line than I had before. And we've come down, we've tested support, and we've come down retesting it, which has broken slightly the rising support trend line. But as I was saying last week, if it did that, then that didn't mean we were going to break down straight away. It might well just mean that we were setting up a topping pattern, unless this bull flag is the topping pattern, which is rarer but not unknown. The bull flag is suggesting that we're going to go back and see a test of this high here at 114.78. That might seem a little unlikely given administration policies, but it's a very nice setup, and I tend not to discount these things until we've got really strong evidence that they're not going to happen. I don't think we have that kind of evidence here, and we've got a pretty nice setup for this to go up. So we've even got a possible monthly RSI 5 buy signal brewing now. In terms of the weekly chart, we've already got a weak RSI 14 buy signal fix. We've got an RSI 5 buy signal fix. These signals tend to mean something. We've got a nice looking little level bottom here. I'm thinking we could see a big rally here, and even if it gets up into the 103, 104 area and fails there, that would be a pretty substantial rally, and that's where the target of this pattern would be. And if we have a look at the bigger picture on that, sustained break up over 100.26 would have a target in about the 104.25 area. So all the way back up here. Looks like, all the way back up here. So that would get us back into a stage where potentially it could think about going up and challenging and going back up and retesting this high, which could set up a wonderful level top to finish this overall move on the US dollar, which I've been tracking from the lows here for years with various notes. I mean, this is a note from 2012. So this is a note I wrote a long time ago, probably back in 2010, 2009. But dollar is something I've been very interested in and been tracking for a very long time. And the obvious end to the sequence is a double top here, which breaks down. But we could get much the same effect if we see a collapse of confidence in the dollar, which allows it to break down and potentially set up a low in the 80 area, which is an area where it's spent quite a lot of time before. So I'm watching this with great interest, but I'm not writing off the possibility that we are going to go back and retest this high, even if government policy makes it seem rather unlikely. In terms of the daily chart, no current divergence, but obviously we've got a lovely looking double bottom here, and we've just broken over, declining resistance on the bounce up from the low. We could come back, retest the low again, set up another double bottom, and then head back up towards this double bottom resistance. But at the moment, this is forming as though it's going to give retesting the high a shot. So I will watch that with great interest. In terms of the euro, we have a similar looking bear flag and a nice looking little double top here. It's nice. It's very nice. We could see that retest the low if dollar's got the juice to go back up and retest the high. In terms of the weekly chart here, RSI 5 sell signal fixed. In terms of the daily chart, no current divergence, but a very nice looking potential level top. Which would have a target down here initially in about the 108.5 to 109.25 area. And again, it's nicely formed. GBP, we've got the same bear flag set up, but we didn't actually see a retest of the high. So we don't have the same kind of double top setup here. But to be honest, GBP is only about 8 or 9% of the US dollar index. The euro is 56%, I think. So, GBP is just the tail to the euro dog in terms of the action on the on that. So I'm really looking at the euro's pattern and thinking that looks ready to go. In terms of the others, only the yen is as important. And there, I'm bigger picture, I'm leaning down as I am with the US dollar. And these would likely and tend to move together. Could this see a retest of the high to set up a double top? Sure, it could. And if we do see a retest of the high on the US dollar, I'd be leaning towards that happening here too. What I would say is that actually, if you look at the US dollar here, let's have a look at 2022. What's happened there? We went up a lot, and then we made a high in 22, and then since then we've been forming a bull flag. US to JPY, well, this is again, I think this is 9% of the US dollar index. There, we went up to a high in 22, and then we had a retracement, and then we went up even higher. This has obviously been moving quite differently, but again, we could see a retest of this high. But it's not quite the same looking setup as we've got on the USD, directly. On USD CAD, we've got a beautiful level top here already. So could this go back up and retest this high? Yes. But again, this has actually been, even though this move is correlated positively, this has been moving more like the yen. Since 22, we had a 22 high, we went down, it went up considerably since then. So again, looking somewhat different. In terms of the Australian dollar, we've finally seen a slight break up from this trend line, because if we're going to see and if we were to see a big move up on the dollar, we would see it move down here, might get us down into a retest of this low, although that wouldn't be the second low of a huge double bottom here. On NZ, again, we could break out of this consolidation triangle we've been in for now 5 years now and go down exploring, which we probably would do if the dollar breaks up and retests the high here. So we'll see how that goes. Well, I'm watching it with enormous interest. In terms of ZB, we got a week 6-minute sell signal fixed here. We've actually broken down for a double top with a target significantly lower. We almost reached one target actually, which is in about the 115.25 area, but I've got another target down, or the alternate target's down in the 115.10 area. We've not reached either as yet, and we do have a week 6-minute buy signal fixed, suggesting we might see a rally here. But I've got more to say about those on the bigger picture charts. In terms of ZN, Kind of looks like a bull flag forming here. We've got a possible 60-minute buy signal brewing, but it hasn't fixed yet. All right, let's have a look at that on the bigger picture charts. In terms of TYX, which is the 30-year yield, we've got a potential level top here, which I'm thinking has almost no chance of playing out, but you never know. But I think in terms of what I was thinking would happen in terms of maybe the Trump, maybe some action being taken on paying down debt and, getting the US onto a sustainable fiscal course, none of that has been done so far in the Trump administration. So I don't think the chances of this going down an awful lot are high at all. Much as Trump is hoping that control of the Fed would give that to him. But the fact is, it won't give it to him. The Fed doesn't actually control interest rates. The bond markets control interest rates with yields. And to get yields down, the first thing you have to do is actually impress the bond markets with the idea that you actually care whether they ever get their money back. And so far, this administration has been not doing that at all. In terms of the shorter terms, no current divergence. We broke below this possible channel support here. So this channel I'd been watching is no longer in play. In terms of the, although it is a break of a support trend line. In terms of the daily chart, I've been watching for possible trend lines here, and it's funny, it looks rather different from what I was working on here. I've put in a draft flag here, but to be honest, I was hoping the next low would give me more to work with in terms of trend line. It hasn't really given me a lot. We had an RSI 5 buy signal fixed at the low. We've already reached the possible near miss target, but I am wondering about a low retest now. In terms of TNX, we had a buy signal too. That's also reached the possible near miss target. And TLT, we had a daily sell signal that hasn't reached the possible near miss target yet. I'm still thinking we may go higher on bonds. We will see, but of course the cuts in interest rates aren't that great traditionally for bonds prices. We might well find them heading down again, so we will see. In the short term, on the hourly chart, I've got a possible RSI 14 sell signal brewing on TNX and a possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing too. In terms of TLT, we've got possible RSI 14 buy signal brewing and an RSI 5 buy signal fixed, suggesting that we are going to see some strength on bonds next week. All right, let's move over to the oils. Okay, CL. I'm still leaning lower on this. We've seen a bit of a bounce here, but of course the other thing about the cutting interest rates and the implication that the economy is not doing too well is not doing well economies don't tend to be that good for oil prices. So while we do have a very bullish looking setup here that will likely start within a few months, I'm still thinking we might go and retest the lows, and I'm not seeing anything really to contradict that so far on oil. Heating oil, we've got a nice looking rising wedge here, obvious path there to go down and retest the August low in the 2.175 area. On RBOB, we saw a retest of this high, and then this rising megaphone from the low has just broken down, suggesting we're going to see more downside there too. Looking at NG, this is kind of looking like a consolidation triangle, not with huge confidence. We saw a breakdown here, but to be honest, that's less of an issue if it's more of an issue for a classical triangle, but not so much for an Elliott wave triangle. I'm wondering about a consolidation triangle that might deliver a retest of this low. We will see. All right, let's move over to the bigger picture chart. All right, let's have a look at oil. Now, oil, on the monthly chart, we've got this very nice looking falling wedge here, and it's broken up, and it could be just expanding, i.e. we go down to the support trend line, and then we've just got a bigger wedge, but I'm thinking this is likely bottoming out. We saw a fail at the 50 month moving average, and I'm leaning towards seeing a retest of the low to set up the second low of a double bottom. And we've got the same wedge from the 22 high on heating oil, and we've got the same wedge on gas oil. These are all pretty bullish. Bigger picture, and these could all be bull flags on the bigger picture. And on the main oil here, this could be potentially a bull flag which breaks up with a target of 126.42. What could cause that? I've no idea. but I will say this is a very bullish leaning overall setup, and I'm watching for reversal patterns to form here. The obvious way to form those reversal patterns, there are other options, but the obvious way would be to go back and retest these lows. 56.06 on WTIC, and then we would see how it went from there. But that could set up very nice looking double bottoms. In this case, a double bottom on WTIC. Take this back over 100. We'll see. In terms of divergence, on oil, we've got very little. On all of the oils, we've got very little. We've been going sideways for a while. If we were, one reason to think also that we might go back and retest the lows is to set up some decent looking positive divergence. In terms of heating oil, we don't really have a decent looking potential inverted head and shoulders, possibly, but not particularly pretty. We don't have great reversal patterns at the moment, and we don't really have any positive divergence. So I am leaning towards seeing the retest below, but I would note that this is a potential inverted head and shoulders. On heating oil, I have another uglier potential inverted head and shoulders, but again, I'd prefer to see a retest of the low. On gas oil, I haven't really got anything here at the moment, and at the moment this looks rather like a bear flag, so I'm leaning towards this, setting up a retest of the lows, and that's what I would expect to see. So that's what I'm leaning towards on the oils. In terms of natural gas, we had a double bottom break up here with a target up in the 6 area, and that is in the process, I think, of failing. In terms of the pattern setup, this looks like a bear flag mega frame from the low. I've just rolled into November here, which is the main reason this price has gone up significantly. But I'm leaning towards this going up a buck or so over the next few months, and then probably resuming the downtrend and heading back into a retest of this low. We'll see how that develops. But in the short term, we had a RSI 5 sell signal breakdown. We've got a nice looking little level top here, and I'm leaning towards that making target. So we'll see how that goes. If we were to see a retest of this low at 265, then that could set up a very nice springboard to see that move up of a buck or more. That I'm thinking we're likely to see. All right, in terms of the metals, let's have a look at GC. Now GC, we had a little double top breakdown here. It wasn't really a decent double top. Not a bad one. You can see this would be the support trend line here. And that got reasonably close to target and now looks as though it is failing. I think we may be forming a larger double top here. And there is some reason to think that we might be setting up patterns to deliver a larger retracement than the one we saw last week. In terms of SI, we've already retested the high. Now, we could be that we're just heading on to the next major target. As I was talking about for the last couple of bigger picture webinars, that is obviously to retest the all-time high at 49.51. We could go straight there, but again, I'm wondering about a double top here and a potential retracement. Palladium, we've got a head and shoulders here, which is broken down with a target in the 11.25 area. And we've got a 6-minute buy signal fixed. We've suddenly been trading sideways through that. Unless we can make some significant headway to the upside, this is likely just a bear flag or bear flag consolidation, and we go down to that target afterwards. In terms of platinum, we've broken up over this declining resistance trend line. It was only a 2-touch resistance trend line, and I am wondering whether we're just setting up a possible alternative resistance trend line, although we could be heading up into a retest of this high. We shall see. In terms of copper, we're still forming a likely bear flag. Sooner or later, that is still likely to go back a relatively... So after the amount of time we've spent setting up this flag, it's almost an embarrassingly short distance back to a retest of this low here in the 4.38 area. We'll see how that goes. All right, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. And on gold, this is the monthly log chart which I've drawn because really it's the only real way you can see the patterns, certainly over the long period here as we've gone up from like 251 to 3,800. I haven't drawn in, now that we're going through this trend line here, I've drawn in a couple of possible alternate trend lines. This one slightly optimistically perhaps is in the 7,200 area at the start of 2027. But I think there is still plenty of space to the upside. I'm not seeing anything that looks like an end to this bull market at the moment. Partially, of course, that's because we've been going through all the negative divergence, and we're also, even though this first high was well over 90. We're pretty close to killing this divergence on the gold monthly chart as well. This has been a very, very strong and extended move, and it could go an awful lot further. Weekly, I am wondering about this RSI 5 sell signal that's fixed. That could fail too, but we've got a possible weekly RSI 14 sell signal brewing. I think we might be setting up for a retracement soon, at least a larger retracement than the ones we saw last week. And I would note that we've got a weak RSI 5 sell signal that is now fixed on the daily chart. Looking at the silver chart, we had an awful lot of resistance in the 39.40 area. We've broken over that with conviction, and the next obvious big target is the retest of the high, all-time high at 49.51. That's a really big resistance trend line because the prior all-time high, which was made 30 odd years before, was actually only a few ticks below that. In terms of the weekly chart, no current divergence, but we are setting up some interesting negative divergence on the daily chart with an RSI 5 sell signal already fixed and a possible RSI 14 sell signal brewing. I am wondering, particularly with some of these patterns I was drawing in the shorter term, whether we might see some resistance here and a modest retracement, maybe getting us back into the 38 or 39 area. All right, looking at palladium. Palladium, still leaning towards the downside here, and we've got an RSI 14 sell signal that hasn't made target yet. On platinum, we've also got an RSI 14 sell signal on the daily, which hasn't made target yet, and I'm leaning towards seeing a bit more downside in all probability. In terms of copper, after this sharp move down, this was mainly around tariffs and the copper tariff that Trump imposed. We've seen this very extended, not extended on this scale, but still taking quite a while to form. Bear flag, likely bear flag forming. I think in due course, this breaks down and we make it down into a retest of this low, into this support trend line, which is now in about the 4.09 or 4.1 area. In terms of GDX, I was talking last week about the prospects for a retracement, and we did see a bit of a retracement. Didn't get us back as far as I was talking about 64, 65. We actually managed to get it down to about 67. But there is a prospect that we could be topping out for a larger retracement here. We've got some very interesting negative divergence. Not formed into full sell signals yet, but I'm wondering about it. And GDXJ looks the same, or at least it will look the same as soon as we retest this high at 92.42, which we haven't quite managed yet. In terms of the negative divergence on the hourly charts that I was talking about last week, that played out to the possible near miss target on GDX and to the full target on GDXJ. Again, I'm wondering about little level tops here, possible larger retracement, something to bear in mind for next week. All right, let's move on to the other commodities. All right, KC. We've got a nice little retracement here. We had a sell signal that's now made target. No current positive divergence, but we're getting pretty close to support at the monthly pivot at the 35150, which I'm leaning towards holding, or at least it'll be a pretty bearish sign if it doesn't hold. SB, I am wondering about a decent rally here, and we've got a potential level bottom. It's got prospects. No current positive divergence on the hourly. On CC, still leaning towards seeing a retest of this low here, which we haven't quite made it to. We have got a weak 6-minute buy signal fixed. I'm wondering about this as a potential level bottom setup. On CT, I'm leaning towards seeing a retest of this low. In the meantime, no current positive divergence. On lumber, we had a larger double bottom and then it's slid down a bit and we've got a smaller double bottom. We've got a 6-minute buy signal fixed. It's got some prospects. Bigger picture though, I think we're likely going down. On ZW, possible IHS forming here, but I am leaning towards seeing a retest of this low. That could be a potential larger double bottom, and I'm quite reasonably bullish, particularly on wheat and corn. Corn, possible little level top here. 60-minute sell signals already reached possible near miss target though. On soy, we've got possible bull flag forming here. I'm wondering about a retest of the high and then down. Bigger picture, I think a bear flag is likely forming on soy. On ZL, we had an IHS break up and fell. I'm leaning towards seeing a retest of this low in the 50 area. We do have a 60-minute buy signal fixed on live cattle. This looks like a bear flag forming, setting up a retest of this low here in the 230 area. So we'll see how that goes. On lean hogs, this looks like, this rising megaphone, I rolled these into December this weekend, cattle and hogs. And this rising megaphone that had broken up and I lost confidence in on the October chart suddenly reappeared. So here it is, very nice resistance trend line. So obviously it migrated early. So we've got a possible head and shoulders here, which I'm wondering whether this could deliver a breakdown from the megaphone. Watching that with interest. No current positive divergence. All right, let's have a look at the bigger picture charts on these. Alrighty. Okay, coffee. We saw a strong move down last week, and we've got a weekly RSI 5 sell signal fixed, and so far that's delivering. What does that mean? Well, I was kind of keen on seeing a retest of the high here at 4.408, but it seems that's going to be delayed, and may be delayed for quite a while by the look of it. We're nowhere near this target, although we often see a bounce when we get when the RSI gets to the 50 area, as you quite often see here, particularly on this kind of area. So we'll see we'll see how that goes, but it may be. I'd love to see a retest of the high, set up a level top, which would be a nested double top at that stage and come down. We could see that. We'll see. In the daily chart, we've got, we had an RSI 5 sell signal, which made target, and we had an RSI 14 sell signal, which has not yet made target. That is suggesting more downside, and we've seen a pretty convincing breakdown with. Wouldn't be a bad time to see a rally, though. In terms of sugar, we've still got the apocalypse pattern down here with a target in the 6.5 to 9 area. On the weekly chart, we've got a possible RSI 5 buy signal brewing. And we've got this nice looking wedge, which is underthrown here. So I'm wondering about a double bottom here. On the sugar chart, we have retested this low, 15.16. We've got a nice looking double bottom here, and I'm thinking it's got a shot. We will see. But I'm quite liking it. But actually, this is the little double bottom that we were looking at on the sugar chart. This is part of a larger double bottom. I'm thinking we might be at the start of a pretty significant move up here. And if we were to make the full target on here, we'd actually get up into a target in about the 18.8, 18.9 area, which would get us over or at this big declining resistance trend line. So I'm really liking the prospects on the upside here. We'll see. Looking at cocoa. We've still got a monthly RSI 14 sell signal fixed, as there's really no history of these making target. Not hard to say anything about that. There's more on the RSI 5s, but we don't have one of those. In terms of the daily chart, we had a buy signal here, and that has pretty much made target now. We're still struggling to get back over the daily middle band. I'm still wondering about another possible retest of this low. We will see. But on the bigger picture, as with coffee, we are a long way above historical norms here. So if we just continue to the downside, that wouldn't astonish me. In terms of wheat, we've got a potential double bottom here, which is broken up with a target, very modest target in the 540, 545 area. And we've got a potential larger double bottom here that on a sustained break up over 617 could get us to a much more interesting sort of 730, 740 area. That could get us back up into a retest of this high here in 24. I'm really liking the setup here. It's nice. I've been looking for this retest of the low at 495 for ages. We saw a lovely reaction off this low. I think it looks pretty good. And I'm thinking this is a nice looking bullish setup for wheat. Looking at corn, nice looking bullish setup here too. Very nice. Obviously needs to break over this declining resistance, but if it does, we've got a potential double bottom resistance of 504, and if it was to make that target, then that would be a target, well, minimum target really, in about the 630 area. So that would be all the way back up here. No. It should be more than that, I would have thought. No, it is 630. Sorry, it's just Lexor Septiv. So that would be the target for it. That would be a very nice rally, and I'm quite liking that too. In terms of that's the weekly chart. We did have a weekly RSI 5 buy signal. That's made target now. On the daily chart, we have got little sell signals fixed here, and I'm wondering about a bit of retracement. We've also got this little IHS, which is broken up with a target in the 455 area, but I was noting that we've also got an possible inverted head and shoulders here. If we were to come down and make a low, right shoulder low in the 400, 420 area, I'd be switching this over and looking at the larger inverted head and shoulders here. which could lead us up to a target much closer to a retest this high here at 504.50. Looking at soybeans, this really looks like a bear flag. It could go higher within the bear flag, but overall, bear flags tend to set up retest the low, and retest the low would be at 936.06. We will see how that goes. In terms of Trump, the impact of Trump on this, I know soybeans in America are in kind of a crisis here because the Chinese stopped buying, got those from Brazil instead. We're not really seeing the impact of that on the price here at all. I can't really look at any of this and think this is detectably Trump influenced. So, but we will see. But meanwhile, we're in a bear flag that's been forming since last year, and ultimately, I'd expect this to return to a retest of the low here at 936.06. Looking at cotton, we've got a lovely looking double bottom here. We are waiting for a full breakup, but if we do see that, then that's got a target which would be in the, where would that be? All right, I think that would be up in about the 95 area. That is a nice target. Very nice target. Not quite as much as that. More like the 86, 87 area, I think. But still a very nice target for a nice move, and potentially this could be part of a larger reversal pattern exactly where it should be, which is close to the 50%. So this is the ideal place to set up a reversal pattern that could potentially get us back up into a retest of this high, which would be a very ambitious move. Looking at lumber, on the weekly chart, no divergence, but we've got this lovely double top. I was saying this might be the second high of a double top. When we retested the high here, that double top is now broken down with a target in the 350 area. I'm thinking it may well make it. In terms of the short term, we've got an RSI 14 buy signal fixed. We made target on the RSI 5 buy signal. We've been seeing a bit of a rally, and we are holding currently the daily middle band as support. If that breaks, then I think we could just resume the downtrend. Otherwise, we might see a bit more rally here. I'm a little skeptical about this RSI 14 buy signal making target. You can see this one here, this one, the only one on the chart that did make target, but we went significantly lower before it made that target. This may well do the same. We shall see. All right, great. And lastly, let's have a quick look at crypto. Now, crypto, I was talking last week about the possibility that we would set up daily sell signals, and we actually had one form and fix, and it's now pretty much made the possible near miss target over the weekend. So while that has definitely delivered, it hasn't delivered much, and this may just be a retracement before we go higher. We've also got one, I was talking about the possibility that we'd get one on Solana, and we've got another one fixed there. We've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed, and we've got an RSI 5 sell signal fixed. This hasn't come down a great deal. What I was thinking here was that we've got a potential little level top here at 230, and I was wondering whether we might make the target down in the 205 to 210 area. That hasn't broken down yet, and of course we're kind of running out of the daily sell signal here, but I am still wondering if that might deliver. In terms of supporting a retracement in equities this week, this is looking a lot less supportive than it seemed it might do. So we're pretty much tapped out on the daily sell signal on Bitcoin already, and we're not that far away on the RSI 5 sell signal, which is the main sell signal on Solana. So maybe this isn't going to deliver anything particularly dramatic. But I'm watching this double top here. If this breaks down, could make target and deliver a nice little retrace, which could match one on equities. But honestly, I'd have preferred this to look more bearish at this stage because, to be honest, I'm not seeing a particularly nice bearish setup really on equities here. I'm just seeing a period of historically bearish tape, which will probably deliver. But that might just be a sideways consolidation. We shall see. All right, great. In that case, I think that's a wrap, guys. I'll catch you again on Wednesday, and everyone take care.